You bombed human colonies, congratulations. You've just awakened the dragons. HFY Sci-Fi story. The transmission came through the main console as Captain Thaler gazed out into the void of space, the stars twinkling in the distance. His fleet, a mighty armada of warships, had just successfully bombarded another human colony. The humans, fragile and weak, never stood a chance. Their cities, once bustling hubs of activity, now lay in ruins, a testament to the superiority of his species. He listened as the voice crackled over the intercom. It was an encrypted military broadcast from the High Command. Captain Thaler, the voice began, we have just received intelligence from the Council of Elders. You may want to prepare yourself for development. The humans, they. The message abruptly cut off. A static buzz filled the air. Idiots, Thaler muttered, slamming a fist against the armrest of his chair. Why can't they get their transmissions right? But then, as he turned to order his crew to re-establish contact, something happened. A blinding flash of light erupted from the outer reaches of the system, so sudden and powerful that it nearly overwhelmed their sensors. Captain, something's wrong, the comm officer shouted. The entire colony's atmosphere is destabilizing. It's like... Before she could finish her sentence, a violent tremor shook the entire ship. Alarms blared, and the walls groaned as if the ship itself was being crushed. What in the name of the stars is going on? Thaler barked, gripping the console. He watched in disbelief as the main screen displayed an image of the human colony, a pale blue planet now engulfed in waves of intense, fiery energy. The flames flickered like dragons' tongues licking the sky. Then, the unthinkable happened. A colossal shadow loomed over the planet, blocking out the stars. It was impossible at first to comprehend, but as the shape became clearer, Thaler's heart froze. A dragon. An ancient, gigantic creature, its scales gleaming like molten metal, wings like massive sails of living steel. It roared, a sound that reverberated through the very fabric of space itself. Dragon? Thaler gasped. That's impossible. Sir, the sensor officer cried out. We're detecting more. Dozens, no, hundreds of them, emerging from the core of the planet. They're all moving toward us. The crew scrambled, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. No one, not even the most seasoned commanders, had ever heard of dragons in human history. It was an old myth, a bedtime story for children, a tale of great beasts long gone. But now, here they were, vast and real, tearing through the planet's surface like it was paper, and heading straight for Thaler's fleet. The High Command's transmission cut back in, barely audible over the cacophony. Captain Thaler, the voice said, trembling with fear. We did not understand. The humans, there was a long pause, followed by an agonized scream. Then the transmission cut out entirely. Thaler clenched his fists. What did they mean by that? What do the humans have to do with this? A crew member shouted from the tactical station. Sir, those dragons, they're moving faster than anything we've ever seen. We can't outrun them. They're heading straight for the fleet. Deploy all shields, Thaler ordered, his voice steady but betraying the unease creeping into his thoughts. Prepare for battle. But it was already too late. The first dragon tore through the lead ship in a flash of fiery light, its massive claws slicing through the hull like paper. The crew's screams were cut short as the ship exploded into a cloud of debris. We can't hold them off, the weapons officer shouted, firing a barrage of missiles at the incoming dragons. But the weapons had no effect. The dragon's scales were impervious to any weapon the fleet had. Thaler watched in horror as one by one, his ships were obliterated. The dragons didn't just destroy the ships, they seemed to be hunting them, targeting weak points and reducing them to space dust with surgical precision. Then, one of the dragons turned its gaze toward Thaler's command ship. It opened its mouth, and the energy it exhaled was like nothing he had ever seen, pure, unbridled devastation. The firestorm engulfed the ship, and Thaler's world went white. When Thaler regained consciousness, he found himself on the floor of what remained of his ship. His body was bruised and battered, but he was alive, barely. A voice echoed through his mind, not from a transmission or a comm channel, but directly from somewhere deep inside his consciousness. It was ancient, primal, and powerful. You dared to harm our children. Now, you will face our wrath. Thaler staggered to his feet, looking out into the void, where the dragons were now circling the wreckage of his fleet like vultures, and in the distance, the human planet, once a target of annihilation, now seemed to glow with an unnatural energy. The humans, weak as they were, had somehow awoken the dragons, creatures who had lain dormant for eons, waiting for the right moment to reassert their dominance. You didn't just attack a colony, the voice echoed again. You attacked us, the dragons, the ancient guardians of this universe, and now you will pay the price. Thaler realized, with a sickening lurch in his stomach, that the humans had been more than they appeared. They had a secret, an ancient power, and now the dragons were awake. And it was too late to stop them. The dragons had been waiting, and now, they were hunting. Thaler stumbled back as the voice faded from his mind, leaving only a resonating silence that hung heavily in the air. The screens flickered weakly around him, showing the last remnants of his fleet being consumed by the dragon's fiery breath. His hands gripped the armrests of the command chair, his mind racing. The dragons, the real dragons, the creatures of myth, beasts born of fire and legend, their return heralded not just by fury, but by something deeper. Thaler had been so sure, so certain that his species was the apex predator of the universe. The humans had been just another stepping stone in the conquest of the galaxy. But now, his entire empire was on the brink of annihilation, reduced to nothing by something so ancient, so primal, that it defied logic. A sharp beep broke his thoughts. A new transmission was incoming, though not from high command. Thaler, if you're hearing this, I hope it's not too late. The voice was ragged, strained, and familiar. It was Commander Vera, his most trusted officer and a longtime ally. You've unleashed something far beyond our reach, something that... Thaler's hands shook as he activated the console. Vera, he interrupted, his voice rough. What the hell is going on? What are these dragons? Why didn't anyone warn us? The image of Vera flickered onto the screen. Her face was gaunt, eyes wide with fear. You don't understand, Thaler. The humans didn't just create those beasts, they awakened them. The dragons were guardians, ancient protectors that sealed themselves away millennia ago. They weren't just hiding, they were waiting for the right moment to strike. Thaler's throat went dry. Waiting for us? Yes, she confirmed. But it's not just about retaliation. The dragons are tied to the human race in a way we can't fathom. Their power, their energy, it's interwoven with the human race's history. The destruction of their colonies, the threat to their species, it broke the seal. It stirred the dragons. They're protecting the humans now. The words hung in the air, heavy with dread. You're telling me these creatures, these ancient beasts, are protecting humans? Thaler couldn't believe it. It made no sense. The humans, the same species he had wiped out without hesitation, had some kind of bond with these dragons? I know it sounds insane, but it's true, Vera continued, her voice quivering. The dragons didn't just awaken to fight us, they awakened to defend the humans from any threat, from any species that would try to dominate them, and they won't stop until we're all gone, every last one of us. Thaler felt a chill crawl up his spine as the gravity of Vera's words sank in. His fleet was being obliterated by creatures of unimaginable power, creatures that weren't just mythical, but tied to the very essence of the humans they had sought to destroy. What can we do? How do we fight them? Thaler asked, though he already knew the answer. Vera's face was grim, her eyes filled with a sorrow that spoke of finality. There's nothing we can do, Thaler. They're not just attacking our ships, they're erasing our entire existence. We've underestimated them. We've underestimated humanity. Thaler sat back in his chair, his mind a whirl of thoughts. The humans, those fragile creatures he had thought so weak, had something no other species in the galaxy had, a connection to the ancient powers of the universe. Something that had been sealed away, waiting for the day when it would be needed. Now that day had come. Vera, Thaler whispered, his voice heavy with defeat. We're finished, aren't we? Vera's eyes closed for a moment, as if the weight of the galaxy was pressing down on her. Yes, the dragons are unstoppable. We were never meant to challenge them, and now we'll pay the price for that. The screen cut off, leaving Thaler in the eerie silence of his destroyed command ship. Outside the shattered windows of his bridge, the dragons circled like gods of old, their fiery breath lighting the dark expanse of space. The rest of the fleet was gone, nothing more than scattered debris. burning wreckage in the void. Thaler knew there was no way out. He could attempt to flee, but the dragons were already everywhere. Their power, their presence, stretched across the galaxy now, an unstoppable tide. He had woken them, and in doing so, had sealed his own doom. To think, Thaler murmured bitterly, we thought we were the apex predators. Suddenly, the space around him shimmered. A flash of light, brilliant and intense, washed over the remains of his ship, and a shadow fell over the bridge. It was one of them, a dragon, its enormous head appearing just outside the viewport, its golden eyes glowing with ancient intelligence. Thaler felt an intense pull, an ancient energy that resonated deep within him. He had no weapon, no force that could stand against this creature, but the dragon did not attack. It simply watched him, and in the depths of those eyes, Thaler saw something, a deep, unsettling sadness. The dragon wasn't just protecting the humans, it was mourning the destruction, the chaos that had been wrought. The humans had awoken the dragons, and now, the dragons would awaken humanity's true power, the power of survival, the power of the ancient bond between them. And as the last of Thaler's thoughts faded, the dragon's roar echoed through space, a sound of both vengeance and hope. It wasn't just the end of Thaler's empire. It was the beginning of something far more ancient, and far more terrifying. The last of Thaler's consciousness slipped into the darkness, his vision fading into the overwhelming glow of the dragon's gaze. But even as his thoughts dissolved, he could feel the presence of the creature watching him, not as a foe, but as something more, a witness to his failure. Time passed in an indeterminate blur, and Thaler's ship, once a symbol of his people's power, was now a hollow shell, drifting in the vast expanse of space. The dragons had finished their work with brutal efficiency. There was no resistance. His fleet was gone, reduced to space debris, scattered like the remnants of a dream that had never truly come to fruition. But the dragon, the one that had loomed above his shattered bridge, was still there. Thaler's death, however inevitable, was not the end of the story. The dragons didn't just annihilate, they witnessed. They were part of something far greater than mere destruction. They were guardians, protectors of the humans' fragile existence. And now, it seemed, they had a purpose even larger than themselves. On the human planet, the sky burned. The planet had become a battleground, its cities shattered, its seas boiled, and its skies aflame with the force of the dragon's wrath. But beneath the fiery storm, the humans had not been passive victims. They had endured, and they had learned. Through generations of oppression and the countless trials that had come before, they had unlocked something ancient within themselves, something they had forgotten long ago. The dragons had not awakened solely to punish the invaders. No, there was a deeper bond between the humans and these mythic creatures, a connection forged in the forgotten epochs of their history. The dragons had been the humans' protectors, their gods, their ancient guardians. They were a living part of their legacy. And now, the humans were beginning to understand what that meant. Across the fractured world, strange occurrences began to unfold. People, ordinary humans, were tapping into something far greater than they had ever imagined. The ancient power, dormant for centuries, surged within them. Humans had always thought they were weak, vulnerable, fragile, but that was a lie. They were far stronger than the galaxy had ever realized. And the dragons? They were not just protectors. They were teachers, guiding humanity toward their true potential. As the chaos outside raged, in the deepest bunkers, hidden in the forgotten ruins, and beneath the ancient temples of Earth, humans began to hear it, the voice of the dragons. It echoed through their minds, ancient and powerful, stirring something primordial in their hearts. It is time. The voice resonated. You have awakened the guardians. The cycle has begun again. At first, it was only a whisper, a suggestion, but as the days wore on, it grew louder, clearer. The dragons were speaking to them. They were showing them how to harness the power of the earth itself, how to connect with the ancient forces that had once allowed the dragons to thrive. The first human to truly connect with the dragons was a woman named Ilara. She had been a scientist before the invasion, an astrophysicist who had always believed in the possibility of otherworldly forces. But nothing in her studies had prepared her for the truth that the dragons brought. When she first felt the surge of energy, she thought she was going mad. But as the power coursed through her, she understood. She was no longer just a human. She was something more, a bridge between the ancient protectors and her own kind. And it wasn't just her. All across the planet, others were awakening to the same power, unlocking latent abilities. Strange and mysterious, humans could now communicate with the dragons, not just as servants, but as equals. The old myths had been wrong. The humans were not weak. They were destined for greatness. And it was the dragons who had always known it. Elara stood in the heart of one of the ancient ruins, her eyes glowing with the energy she had unlocked. The dragon's voice whispered again, not through her ears but directly into her mind. You are the true inheritors of the power that once ruled this world. The time of domination is over. The time of balance has arrived. The humans would not just survive, they would thrive. They would no longer be the prey, the conquered. They would become guardians in their own right. The dragons had taught them that. The dragons had chosen them. In the dark expanse of space, far beyond the reach of the human planet, the last remnants of Thaler's species drifted, defeated, helpless. What had they thought? That they could simply conquer the universe and bend it to their will? Now, the universe had shown them its true face. The dragons had returned, not for revenge alone, but to set the universe back into balance, and to elevate the humans to their rightful place. The galaxy was no longer the realm of conquerors, but of guardians, and the humans, though small and fragile, had become the greatest guardians of them all. And as the dragons soared through the void, their wings casting shadows over the shattered fleets of Thaler's people, the universe held its breath. The cycle had turned, the dragons had awakened, and humanity, for the first time, had found its true place among the stars. It was not the end, it was the beginning. And the dragons would watch over them, as they had done before, guiding them, teaching them, and ensuring that no one would dare disturb the balance again. As the days passed, humanity began to rebuild, but not in the way Thaler's people or even the dragons could have expected. The destruction had been absolute, yet from it, something far more powerful was rising. It was as if the very fabric of the planet had been infused with the energy the dragons had unleashed, and the humans were not only surviving but thriving in ways never before imagined. The humans, with their newly unlocked abilities, quickly spread across the globe. They no longer saw themselves as mere survivors of an invasion. They saw themselves as something far greater. It wasn't just about the ancient bond with the dragons, they were awakening to a deeper truth about themselves. The myths were right. They had been meant for greatness all along. Elara, now a figure of immense power, led the charge. She had become the focal point of the dragon-human connection, the one who had bridged the gap between the ancient beings and her people. She had seen the truth of it. Humans were not just a species to be protected. They were meant to wield the power of the earth, the stars, and the very fabric of space itself. Under her leadership, humanity began to reconstruct its societies, not just with technology and industry, but with the wisdom and strength they had gained from the dragons. Cities once lost to war and devastation were now flourishing, infused with the ancient energies that the dragons had shared. The very soil seemed to pulse with life, and the sky, once choked with smoke and fire, was now clear and vibrant, streaked with the colors of renewal. But not all was calm. Far beyond Earth, the remnants of Thaler's empire, now fractured and scattered, were still reeling from the devastation. News of the humans' resurgence spread like wildfire across the galaxy, and the reaction was swift. Those who had allied with Thaler's species, other conquerors, tyrants, and warlords saw this new power as a threat. The dragon's return had signaled the end of the old order. They had underestimated the humans once, but they would not make that mistake again. The first wave of invaders came from the edge of the galaxy, a coalition of warlords and empires who saw the rise of humanity as a challenge to their dominion. Their fleets, vast and powerful, began to approach Earth, each ship bristling with weapons designed to overwhelm any defense the humans might have had. But the humans were ready. The dragons, their ancient bond now fully restored, were not passive guardians. They had not only returned to defend humanity, they had returned to fight alongside them. And the humans, now filled with an understanding of their own power, were ready to wield it. Elara stood at the helm of a newly formed council, an assembly of humans who had embraced their connection with the dragons and unlocked their hidden potential. They had built new weapons, not of steel and gunpowder, but of the very essence of the universe, weapons capable of manipulating the elements, bending the laws of space and time, and commanding the forces of nature. As the first of the enemy fleets approached Earth, Ilara spoke to the assembly, her voice carrying the weight of the ages. "This is our moment," she said. "The dragons have shown us the way. We are not simply inheritors of this world, we are the guardians of the stars. We will defend our home, and we will protect the balance of the universe." The dragons roared in unison, their voices shaking the very air, and their presence filled the skies once more. Humans, now standing side by side with these ancient beings, began to harness their newfound power. Energy crackled in the air as they summoned storms, reshaped the terrain, and created barriers of force that could deflect the most advanced weaponry of their enemies. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The invaders had advanced technology and firepower, but they lacked the one thing the humans and dragons now possessed: unity. The bond between humanity and the dragons was a force that no weapon could destroy. Together, they were unstoppable. As the battle raged, the humans discovered more about their newfound abilities. They could manipulate the fabric of space itself, folding it, bending it, and using it as a weapon. They could control the flow of energy, turning their enemies' attacks back on them. And when the dragons joined the fray, their power was unlike any other. Fire, lightning, and cosmic energy erupted from their massive forms, obliterating entire fleets in a single breath. The invaders were stunned. They had never encountered anything like this. The humans were no longer the prey. They were the hunters. The tide of the battle turned quickly, and within hours, the enemy fleet was decimated, scattered to the wind. But the victory was not just a military one. It was a symbolic moment, a declaration that humanity, with the dragons at their side, would not be subjugated again. The galaxy now knew the truth. The humans were no longer weak. They were not just survivors, they were guardians. In the wake of the battle, humanity's rise continued. The old empires and warlords who had once sought to dominate the galaxy were forced to acknowledge the new order. The dragons, ever watchful, ensured that no one dared challenge the humans again. They had awakened not just the power of Earth, but the power of the entire cosmos. And so, the universe began to change. The dragons and humans forged a new alliance, one that would last for eons. They would protect the balance of the universe, ensuring that no species, no matter how powerful, would ever again threaten the harmony of existence. Ilara, standing beneath the vast sky, watched as the dragons soared overhead, their wings spread wide, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of her people's responsibility. They were no longer just a species surviving on a fragile planet. They were guardians of a new era, an era in which the strength of the human spirit, combined with the power of the ancient dragons, would protect the universe for generations to come. The cycle had turned, and now, humanity was not just a part of the galaxy, they were its protectors. And in the silence of space, the dragons' ancient voices echoed one last time, a final promise. We have awakened, and now, we stand together. The years that followed were ones of unparalleled growth and transformation for humanity. What had once been a fragile species, at the mercy of invaders, now stood as the unquestionable force in the galaxy. The dragons, whose ancient power had awakened alongside humanity, did not simply serve as protectors but as guides, teachers who helped humanity understand the depths of their new abilities. Ilara's vision had become a reality. Under her leadership, humans learned to harness the energy of the earth and beyond. They reshaped their cities, not with tools of war or dominance, but with the power of harmony and balance. What was once a planet ravaged by conflict was now a world of wonder, a place where science, magic, and the ancient arts melded into something new. As the human race flourished, they extended their reach into the stars. They did not conquer or colonize as their enemies had once tried to do. Instead, they formed alliances, built trade routes, and forged diplomatic relations with other species across the galaxy. The dragons, ever present, guided them, ensuring that no ambition ever tipped the scales toward destruction. Peace, balance, and mutual respect became the foundation of humanity's interstellar presence. However, not all species in the galaxy were content to let humanity rise without challenge. Some, particularly the ancient empires that had once ruled vast stretches of space, now viewed humanity and its dragon allies as a direct threat to the established order. They saw the humans' rise as an upsetting of the delicate balance that had kept the universe in its place for eons. And so, A new tension began to simmer across the stars. On the distant planet of Relos, an ancient council of warlords, once the ruling elite of the galaxy, convened. They had watched humanity's rise with growing unease. These humans, backed by the dragons, had shattered the old status quo. No longer were they the prey to be hunted or conquered. They had become the power. Warlord Zalith, a tall figure draped in armor forged from the bones of ancient beasts, stood at the center of the council chamber. His eyes glowed with the dim light of 1,000 stars. The other warlords, cloaked in shadow, regarded him with wary attention. They think themselves invincible. Zalith's voice echoed through the chamber. The humans, emboldened by their newfound powers, have no understanding of the balance. They believe the dragons are their guardians, but the dragons are a force of nature. They cannot be controlled. It is time we remind them of that. But how? One of the warlords asked, her voice sharp with concern. The dragons will not allow it. We've seen the destruction they've wrought. Any attempt to challenge them would be suicide. Zalith's smile was cold, calculated. The dragons may be powerful, but they have forgotten the ancient laws. There are forces older than them, forces that even the dragons fear. Another warlord, a grizzled veteran named Orner, spoke up. What do you propose, Zalith? Zalith stepped forward, his armor clinking with each movement. We strike at the humans, not through war, but through their own hubris. We find the heart of their power, their connection to the dragons, and we sever it. Back on Earth, Ilara sensed a growing unease in the cosmic energy that flowed around her. Her bond with the dragons had deepened over the years, but something felt wrong. The balance that had been carefully cultivated was being threatened. The dragons, once content to watch over humanity, now seemed restless. Ilara's connection to them told her as much. The stars above Earth had begun to flicker, their light dimming. Even the dragons, who had always been the guardians of balance, seemed to be withdrawing. It was as if a veil had descended, obscuring their once clear guidance. Ilara, a voice broke through her reverie. It was Kane, one of the other human leaders who had joined her in the Council of Guardians. There's something happening at the edge of the system. A fleet, not ours. It's moving toward Earth. Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She turned to face Kane, her mind already racing. How much time do we have? She asked, her voice steady but with a growing sense of urgency. Less than a day, Kane replied grimly. They're moving faster than we expected. Whatever they want, they won't wait long. Ilara's mind raced as she turned to the dragons, who had gathered around her in the deep chamber beneath the Earth's surface. They, too, were restless, their massive forms stirring uneasily as they sensed the disturbance in the universe's flow. Something is coming. One of the dragons spoke in a voice that seemed to reverberate through the very walls. Something dark. Ilara closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind, connecting with the dragons. Through their shared bond, she could feel the pressure building, the weight of something ancient. Something wrong. The cosmic balance was shifting. We need to prepare, she said softly, her voice echoing with resolve. The galaxy is not done with us. We've seen the rise of the humans, but now, it seems we must face the consequences. The dragons roared in unison, a sound that shook the Earth itself. Ilara could feel the power of their ancient voices coursing through her, filling her with a strange mix of fear and hope. The battle for the balance had only just begun. Far from Earth, on the edge of the galaxy, Zalith and his coalition of warlords watched as their fleets gathered in the darkness. The time to strike had come. They would not attack the humans directly. No, they were not foolish enough to confront the dragons head-on. But they would find the key to humanity's power, the dragon's connection to the humans, and sever it. Zalith had uncovered an ancient artifact, one said to be capable of breaking the bond between dragons and humans. It was a weapon of unfathomable power, long lost to time. He grinned as he held the artifact in his hand. The humans, with their dragons at their side, had become a force too powerful to ignore. But Zalith knew better. He had learned from the ancient texts. The dragons were protectors, yes, but they were also bound by ancient oaths and laws that even they could not break. If the balance was disrupted, chaos would reign. And chaos was exactly what he intended to bring. The final showdown was coming, between those who would protect the galaxy and those who would tear it asunder. Between the humans, who had become the guardians of the stars, and the warlords, who would stop at nothing to restore the old order. And at the center of it all, Ilara stood, with the dragons by her side, ready to face the darkness that had once been forgotten but now was on the verge of returning. The cycle of destruction and renewal was about to begin again. And this time, humanity would not be the prey, they would be the protectors. The tension in the air was palpable, a storm building in the distance as Ilara stood at the heart of the council's war room, her gaze focused on the stars beyond Earth's atmosphere. The fleets of warlords were nearing, and with them, the promise of chaos. But it wasn't just their weapons or their armies she feared, it was the ancient artifact they possessed, the key to severing the bond between humanity and the dragons. Ilara had felt it in her soul. The dragons, usually so steadfast and constant, were uneasy. She had tapped into their collective consciousness earlier, but their responses were fragmented, distant. Something was pulling them away, weakening their connection to humanity. And she knew, deep in her core, that if the warlords could manipulate that artifact, the dragons would be bound once more to the cosmic order, leaving humanity vulnerable. "We can't afford to wait," Ilara spoke, her voice steady but laced with a sense of urgency. "We need to strike first, before they can use the artifact." Kane, her closest ally and second in command, looked to her with concern. "We don't know exactly what this artifact can do, Ilara. It's ancient, a relic from before the dragons. We've never faced anything like this." Ilara nodded grimly, her thoughts already racing ahead. She had been preparing for this moment ever since they first discovered the artifact's existence, a weapon that had the potential to break the ancient contract between dragons and humans. She had always feared that, someday, their bond might be tested. That day had come, and with it, the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. "We'll need to approach this carefully," Ilara said, taking a deep breath. "The dragons may have been pulled back, but they will not abandon us. They will fight. But we have to find a way to stop the warlords from using that artifact. We need to strike at the heart of their fleet, destroy the artifact before it can be activated." Kane's face was grim. "And how do you suggest we do that? The warlords' fleet is massive. Their forces are formidable. Even with the dragons on our side, we'll be outnumbered." Ilara turned to the holographic map of the galaxy projected before them. Her fingers traced a path from Earth to the edge of the star system, where the enemy fleet was massing. "We don't need to fight their entire fleet. We just need to get to the artifact before they use it. A strike team, fast and surgical. We can slip past their defenses and sabotage the artifact before it's too late." Kane's eyes narrowed, sensing the determination in her voice. "You're suggesting we go in alone? With just a handful of us?" Ilara met his gaze, her voice unwavering. "I am not suggesting, I am commanding it. The dragons are our allies, but this is a fight for humanity. We have to show the galaxy that we are no longer just survivors, we are protectors of this universe. We must stand on our own, together." Kane studied her for a moment before nodding in agreement. "I'm with you, but we'll need the right team. I'll assemble the best." Meanwhile, aboard the flagship of the Warlord Coalition, Zaelith stood in front of a darkened chamber, the artifact cradled in his armored hands. The artifact was a small, crystalline sphere, pulsing with an eerie, cold light. It was said to be a relic of the First Age, a weapon created by the ancient races before the dragons, and its power was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Zaelith had learned its secrets over the years, how to harness its energy, how to manipulate it, and now, with the galaxy watching, he was ready to unleash its power. He could feel the artifact's resonance, a hum that reverberated through his very bones. It was calling to him, urging him to release its potential. Once he activated the artifact, the dragons would no longer be able to bond with the humans. Their connection would be severed. The dragons, powerful as they were, would be reduced to mere creatures of myth once more, and humanity would be left defenseless, ripe for subjugation. And then, Zaelith would claim his place at the top of the galaxy. "Are we ready?" Zaelith's voice broke through the silence, and his lieutenants, cloaked in dark robes, nodded in unison. "We are prepared, my lord," one of them said. "The fleet is in position. Once the artifact is activated, the dragons will be rendered powerless. The humans will be helpless." Zaelith's lips curled into a cold smile. "Then let us begin." As Ilara and her strike team prepared for their mission, the dragons gathered in their ancient sanctum beneath Earth's surface, their massive forms still uneasy, sensing the encroaching darkness. Though they had always been the protectors of humanity, there was something uniquely vulnerable about this moment. The artifact, if activated, would disrupt the balance of the universe in ways even the dragons could not predict. Ilara stood before the dragons, her hands raised in a gesture of trust and unity. "We will not fail you," she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of a promise. "The artifact must be destroyed. We will protect humanity, and we will protect you." The lead dragon, its immense golden eyes filled with ancient wisdom, lowered its head to her. "You have already proven your strength, Ilara. You have shown us that humanity is capable of more than we ever imagined. You are no longer our children, but our equals. The galaxy will know that humans have risen." Ilara's heart swelled with pride, but there was no time for sentiment. The enemy was closing in, and the fate of both humanity and the dragons rested on their shoulders. "Let's move," she commanded. In the darkness of space, the battle began. Ilara's strike team, equipped with the latest technology and guided by the dragon's power, slipped through the vast expanse undetected, their ships moving with the precision and speed of a comet streaking through the night sky. The warlord fleet, though massive, was slow to respond, their focus on the upcoming activation of the artifact. As they neared the flagship, Ilara's heart raced. She could feel the artifact's presence, like a shadow hanging over the galaxy, threatening to blot out the stars. It was there, at the center of the Warlord Coalition's flagship, surrounded by layers of defenses and armed guards, but it was within their reach. "Prepare for boarding," Ilara ordered. "Once we're on that ship, there's no turning back." Kane's voice crackled over the calm. "We've got this, Ilara. Just don't let the dragons down." With a deep breath, Ilara nodded. She had trained for this moment. The dragons had trusted them. Humanity had risen to meet the challenge. Now, they had to prove it. They plunged into the heart of the warlord fleet. The strike team's mission clear: destroy the artifact, and with it, the very foundation of the warlord's power. The galaxy's future hung in the balance. As Ilara's team breached the flagship of the Warlord Coalition, they were met with immediate resistance. The sleek, advanced hull of the enemy ship shimmered under the weight of its defensive shields, but the human strike team was undeterred. Their ships, cloaked and agile, slithered through the gaps, undetected by the enemy's sensors. The dragons, working in tandem with their human allies, provided cover, weaving through space like living constellations, their sheer power obscuring the enemy's vision. "Engage on my mark," Ilara whispered, her voice steady, though she could feel the tension rising in her chest. She could already sense the artifact's overwhelming power through the link she shared with the dragons. It was close, too close. Their enemies had placed it deep within the heart of the flagship, a place well guarded and surrounded by throngs of elite warriors. As the ship docked with the flagship's hull, Ilara and her team suited up and disembarked, their boots clanking softly on the cold metallic surface. They moved swiftly, utilizing the silent communication systems embedded in their suits, each step calculated and precise. With the dragon's magic woven through their veins, the team felt as if they could move through the ship undetected, blending with the shadows, empowered by their newfound strength. The first wave of soldiers appeared, and without hesitation, Ilara's team engaged. Kane led the charge, his speed and agility enhanced by the latent energy he'd gained from his bond with the dragons. His team dispatched the enemy guards with swift precision, utilizing both advanced weaponry and the primal force that had become second nature to them. "Clear the hallway," Kane called, his voice a low growl, as his blade tore through one of the armored warlords. The team moved forward with fierce determination, cutting a path toward the core of the flagship. Ilara, her senses attuned to the artifact, felt the growing pressure in the air, like a storm gathering above them. She could feel it now, the artifact thrumming with energy, its dark, cold pulse trying to manipulate the cosmic flow, suppressing the dragon's power. If it was activated, the universe would shift, and the dragons would no longer be able to protect them. They would be reduced to powerless beings, once again bound by the laws of the ancient universe. Humanity would be left defenseless, alone in a galaxy that was about to fall into the hands of the warlords. "We're getting close," Ilara muttered under her breath. "Keep pushing forward. We can't let them activate it." As they neared the central chamber, the doors opened in front of them, revealing the glowing orb. It floated above a pedestal, its icy blue light casting an unnatural glow across the chamber. The artifact hummed, its cold energy vibrating in Alara's bones. But it was more than just the physical sensation of the artifact's power, she could feel the very fabric of reality distorting around it. A lone figure stood before the artifact, Zalith, his silhouette dark against the light of the sphere. He was waiting for them, his grin wide beneath his helmet. "You're too late," Zalith said, his voice laced with dark satisfaction. "This power will be the undoing of the dragons. The artifact is already attuned to the flow of cosmic energy. Once I activate it, all your bond with them will be severed. You'll be just another species, vulnerable, fragile." Ilara's heart raced, but her expression remained calm. "You've underestimated us, Zalith. This isn't just about power. This is about balance. You can't destroy what you don't understand." Without warning, Zalith raised his hand, and the artifact's hum grew louder, vibrating violently as it activated. A surge of energy blasted outward, and Ilara felt the connection to the dragons waver, as if a veil had been torn between them. Her heart sank. But it wasn't over, not yet. "We won't let you," Ilara shouted, her voice a rallying cry to her team. She reached out with her mind, calling to the dragons. "Now, strike with us." The dragons responded instantly, their ancient power coursing through the strike team's veins, amplifying their own abilities. As one, they raised their hands toward the artifact, and the cosmic energy surged around them. Cain was the first to act. His blade, now infused with the raw force of the universe, cut through the air like a comet. With a single, decisive swing, he shattered the pedestal holding the artifact, sending the crystal sphere crashing to the floor. The energy ripple from the artifact reverberated through the entire ship, but Ilara stood firm. The dragons had given them the strength they needed. Zalith snarled, his hands trembling as the artifact's light flickered, losing its power. But before he could react, Ilara rushed forward, using the energy of the dragons and humanity's newfound power to strike him down. The warlord collapsed to the ground, his once indomitable presence reduced to nothing more than a fading shadow. The hum of the artifact began to die, its light fading. Ilara's connection to the dragons pulsed once more, strong and clear. The veil between them had been torn, but it was beginning to mend. Their power was returning. The room was silent save for the soft hum of the failing artifact. Ilara and her team stood over the defeated Zalith, their breathing heavy but steady. "We've done it," Cain said, his voice filled with awe. "The artifact is destroyed. The connection is restored." Ilara nodded, though her mind was still racing. The warlords were beaten, but there would be consequences. This battle had been a desperate one, and the warlords were not the only ones who feared humanity's rise. The galaxy was watching, and soon, others would come, seeking to challenge the balance once more. But Ilara knew one thing for certain: humanity, with the dragons as their allies, would never go back to being prey. They were no longer just survivors. They were the protectors, the guardians of the universe's balance. As the strike team turned to leave, the sound of dragons' wings echoed through the corridors of the flagship. Above them, the stars flickered back to life, as the cosmic balance settled once more. The cycle had turned again. Humanity had risen, not just to defend, but to stand as equals among the stars. And they would never fall.